All right, guys, welcome back to the SEC Basketball Experience, episode number 11 here at Southeastern 16 with Max Barr. I know we took the week off last week, Max, but listen, you and I, behind the scenes, we have other stuff we have to do. It's football season, in case you weren't aware, and if you want to check out all of our other SEC football stuff here at Southeastern 16, you can do that. But we're here to talk basketball, and we're here to talk about a lot of interesting things, including the schedules, which were released earlier this week. We know all of our conference schedules for SEC basketball, and we also know that Max had a great discussion with Keenan Womack about Texas basketball
Oh yeah,
joining the league. So great conversation we'll get to there as well. We'll do the guess the starting lineup as we usually do. Alabama, you're up. We'll
Alabama.
have some fun with trivia, likely, unlikely, and our one bold prediction. Before we get there, let's tell you quickly about our friends at BetOnline, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. And they've got some basketball too. From the preseason NFL to college kicking off, BetOnline has every stats, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the game's being played. If you think you know your stuff, like Max Barr does, get in on our winner take all $300,000, Max, for the
Woo.
NFL Survivor Pool. You and I are all in on the $300,000 NFL Survival Pool or Survivor Pool. That's always an interesting game because you pick week one, and last year there may be some people picking the Chiefs. The Lions went in and took care of business. We didn't get our rematch in the Super Bowl, but that's a story for a different day. But listen, when the game's over, you've won your $300,000 on the Survivor Pool. Head on over to the online casino, get in on a game of blackjack or poker, plus you can unwind with one of over 150 slots games. Head to their website today. Use that promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, to get in on the action. Bet online. The game starts here. All right, Max, $300,000 if you're able to accurately guess the prediction for every single SEC conference game this season. So, do you think you can do that?
I think I got a better chance at winning the Survivor pool than doing that.
I agree with that. I think you're 100% right on that. All right, we're not going to predict every game on every schedule, but we are going to quickly give you thoughts on all 16 schedules because Max, the graphic wizard that he is, has found something to use for every team schedule. So let's start at the top, Max. Who are we starting with? We know who we're starting with. Our number one preseason team here, SEC basketball-wise. Although, who knows, Max? Could change. We still got to put our preseason power rankings out in a couple months. But at least in our summer rankings was Alabama. Max, Alabama's 2024-25 SEC conference schedule.
Yeah, I'm loving the home slate. I don't think they're going to have a tough home game. I mean, you see what they did in their biggest home games this past year, crushed teams. So I think they're going to just cruise through the home stretch, but the road schedule a bit tricky there down the stretch coming down into February, March. You got to do Mizzou, Tennessee, Auburn. There's just some tough road games there to end. But yeah, I think they're going to absolutely cruise at home.
Yeah, tough road slate to start with. What I circled here at South Carolina, at A&M, at Kentucky, I think are all kind of interesting 3 games in your first 5. But I'm like you. I like the home schedule for Alabama. Certainly going to have some tough games. The rivalry game with Auburn. Kentucky's on there. Who knows where other teams are at late? Mississippi State, Florida, all that. But I like the way things set up, at least in the front half of the schedule. I like it a lot for Alabama. So, all right, next up,
Arkansas.
Calling the Hogs. What do you like? What do you not like?
Well, what I don't like, look at that February, Blake. Look at that February. Holy smokes. You're at Kentucky, then you get Alabama. You got to go to Texas. Get LSU at home, then you're at A&M, at Auburn, Missouri, Texas. Woo! That is a February.
Well, I'll tell you what I like. I like the fact they start the season at Tennessee. Seems fitting. January 4th, great game to kick off conference play. But like you said, you look at that February slate starting at February 1 at Kentucky. That's the game everyone has circled. And we might have some insight on that. We'll tease that at the end of this segment, but next week. But at Kentucky, at Texas, at A&M, at Auburn, that's a brutal February slate. But you know what? We always say Cal's teams tend to play their best in February. That's when they really start rolling. So good time for that part of the schedule. But I agree with you. That's what really stands out with the Arkansas one. So, all right, Auburn's
The
up
Auburn
next.
Tigers.
I like this. Just get this all logos here.
Yep.
Just plain visuals. I like this, Max. So
Yeah, a few notes I've got. I really like the end of January into February. You get Tennessee at home, uh, two of the not the toughest road games in the world. Then you get Oklahoma and Florida at home. Then you got to go to Vandy. I like that. It's about a 5-6 game stretch there in a kind of a critical momentum time, where I like Auburn. But man, tough March. Look at that March. You're at Kentucky, you're at A&M, then you get Bama. Woo! That's a tough last 3 games there, Blake.
A question for you, Max. On February the 8th, when they play Florida, over under 1.5 SEC losses for Auburn. Because I think it's an interesting opportunity for the Tigers. Missouri, at Texas, at South Carolina, home against Mississippi State, at Georgia, home against Tennessee, at LSU, at Ole Miss, home against Oklahoma.
If the line's at 1.5,
you're gonna go. You got to go over probably, but I might actually think about the under here because
that's a
I think
very.
I think it's a decent opportunity for Auburn to really get off to a great start here. And then some of those back half games. You got 2 against Alabama, got Arkansas, got to go to Kentucky, got to go to A&M, Florida game. I don't know that front half. I think there's opportunity there for the Tigers. So
Yeah, I like it. I like the start. Could be big for momentum.
$300,000 if you get it right.
All right.
Next up.
The only one I couldn't find a graphic for. I'm gonna drop the overlay here for a second. Only one I couldn't find a graphic for. Florida.
Ooh. That
Yeah.
front half of that schedule. At Kentucky versus Tennessee, at Arkansas versus Missouri versus Texas, at South Carolina versus Georgia, at Tennessee.
I know.
This is like the Florida football schedule that we got for the Gators here. My goodness, this is a tale of two stories here because I think the back half of their schedule a bit nicer than the front half of their schedule.
My notes are tough start, but from mid-February on, it looks promising. I think if you can avoid disaster in the beginning and just getting thrown into a meat grinder, if you can pick up some quality wins and take a little bit of momentum into February, I think they could really hit the ground running. Right around their double home game, South Carolina, Oklahoma. Then you got to go to LSU, Georgia. I feel like that could be a big turn in this season, but that's a tough start.
Billy Napier and Todd Golden exchanging notes here on how to navigate a brutal schedule because, that's kind of what they're both dealing with here. All right, Georgia Bulldogs.
All right, Georgia.
Oh, I like this separation. Here we go.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite graphics because I like how they made the red popped, but not one of my favorite schedules. I think this is the toughest schedule in the conference. That road schedule is just, I don't know how we landed on that road schedule. But then you would think like, okay, the road schedule is brutal. They'll get a ton of opportunities at home. You don't get Alabama. You don't get Tennessee. You don't get A&M. You don't get Arkansas. You don't get Texas. I just think Georgia got the short end of the stick here with this schedule.
So if I'm looking at it correctly here, I'm pretty sure every away game they're going to play will be against teams that ranked in our top 11, I believe, in our preseason or our summer power rankings. I could be wrong on that, but I'm looking South Carolina, Ole Miss. I think that's right. So what you're saying is that, like, again, that is the challenge is like you don't get some of those away games, but you do get some of those games at home against teams that were ranked lower a bit in our rankings. Right. So it's like, take your pick on that. But yeah, that road slate is really tough. As of right now, they would be the underdog probably in, I think, every road game would be my guess.
Probably.
So yeah, if you had to set the number right now, some would be a little close, but some maybe not as much. But yeah, so I'm with you. I think just drawing certain teams twice, like Auburn, like it's not ideal. Like even South Carolina, Florida, yeah. So I mean, it's a tough schedule for Georgia. So
yeah, it's a tough schedule. Alrighty, the Cats.
Here we go.
I'm gonna drop this again because there's a start of the season there. Florida. I think this is probably the most balanced schedule. Honestly, this is what I have in my note. I think this is a very balanced schedule. They don't go through any stretch where it's like 3 really, really tough games, and you don't get any stretch where it's like, man, they're gonna absolutely cruise for 2-3 weeks here. I think this is an extremely balanced schedule.
Exactly what I have. I think this is one of the most balanced schedules probably for any team because it is all about kind of that streaky nature of the opponents. And I think you have some games where you're like, all right, they're going to play a top 10 team, but then they may play a team that's, in the bottom four of the SEC, and it just kind of continues to sort of bounce that way, it feels like.
Yep.
I do think there's, that late January to maybe mid February where you've got two games against Tennessee in there. You've got the big game against Arkansas. Ole Miss could be tricky. You got to go to Texas. That's kind of a that's kind of a difficult stretch. But again, it's
Yeah.
like you feel like you get a little bit of let up in there at certain points, maybe for Kentucky. But yeah, I'm with you. I think this is one of the more balanced ones in the league.
Yeah, just nothing that really pops,
Yeah,
stands out right
yeah,
away. All right, moving on. LSU Tigers.
yeah. I mean, look, LSU, as we know, our rankings mean nothing, but they were one of the teams picked in the bottom four in our preseason composite staff ranking. And this is one where it's like, to me, Max, I look at this and I think this is one where like they definitely need to take advantage of those first three games.
Yep.
It's an interesting start. Vanderbilt at home, at Missouri, at Ole Miss. What is LSU's record coming out of those three games? Because I think that will tell us a lot. Because then it's time to go into the grinder. Where you
Yes.
got, and look, it's not to say, like we said, we're higher on Missouri than most people are. We're probably a little bit higher on Ole Miss maybe than most people are. We're probably higher on Vanderbilt than most people are. So
Yep.
not to say those are going to be easy, but I think those three games before you get to Arkansas, A&M, Alabama, Auburn, and Texas,
Woo.
you got to do a little work up front if you're going to beat those kind of teams that, for some people are hovering around that NCAA tournament bubble range, some a little bit higher, some a little bit lower, maybe. But yeah, like this is not an easy schedule for LSU at all when I look at it here.
My exact notes, I have one sentence, Blake. It's I love the start, but then my goodness.
Yeah.
That's all. I think you said it perfectly. They got to do damage there in those first three to get a little bit of momentum going into that late January stretch.
Yeah.
All right.
They get some of the better teams twice, and some of the
Yep.
teams that are going to be picked lower, they only get once, which is kind of how you try to figure out schedules. So,
And it's a tough late February, March. Florida, Tennessee, Mississippi State, Kentucky, A&M. Just
yeah.
tough.
Great home
stretches.
slate. Great
Yeah.
homestand for LSU fans.
Yeah.
You're going to get to watch a lot of good opponents, I think, at the PMAC. But yeah, it may be tough. So we'll see.
Yeah. Moving on. Mississippi State.
Oh, here we go. Now I know you love this graphic.
This is a great graphic. This is a fantastic graphic.
All right.
But
So what do you think about the schedule?
what's not fantastic is the road schedule. What I have here is I said the two games versus South Carolina in January is going to give us the picture for what this team's going to do the rest of the time, because they get the home and away at South Carolina within a few weeks. But look at the road schedule. You got to go to Alabama. You got to go to Auburn. You got to go to Tennessee. You got to go to Arkansas. And then the ones in between are not too friendly either. You got to go to Ole Miss. We think Georgia's going to be tough to play at home with all that size. Tough road schedule, but you can do a ton of damage at home. I have in my notes similar to last year.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, they were a team that would do a lot of their damage at home and, would try to steal one on the road. I think this is going to be a very similar type of home and away contrast from last year.
Yep. They're going to get an opportunity to win some big games in Starkville at the hump. And I also think this one is there are some difficult stretches, but this to me looks like somewhat similar to Kentucky's in that it feels like there's a little bit of not let up, because we don't really see anybody in the SEC being terrible this year. But I think, there are more games that maybe playing style wise, okay, I love the way they match up with that team, and then again, like, right, it's even, teams like Alabama and A&M and, those kind of teams at home. Yeah, like, and also we always say it's like which teams are hitting their stride at which point in the season. And we always kind of make the talk about Cal's teams in February and all that. But, where is a new look Vanderbilt team at on January 7th or whatever, right? Where's Kentucky at on January the 11th? Like, those are early opportunities, I think, to really to see where Mississippi State's at and if they can maybe take advantage of some of these teams that are just completely new, like a Vanderbilt and Kentucky. So.
And remember, this is going to be a team that's probably the most perimeter oriented from an offense standpoint.
Yeah.
That's not going to be a team you want to catch when they're having a hot day at home and Hubbard's got 5 threes at halftime. That's not, that's not going to be very fun. So
Yeah.
I think this is one of the more interesting schedules in terms of contrasting home and away.
Yeah.
Okay. Mizzou.
There we go.
This is a tough one to read here. They did the full
Yeah.
they did the full schedule. But opening at Auburn, not very fun. But what I have is a massive 4-game stretch to finish the season. If they're a bubble team, if they're
Mm-hmm.
coming down to late February and it's like they got to put together a few wins, I think they have a stretch here at the end where they could really do themselves some favors. You get South Carolina and Kentucky at home, and who knows if the last game of the season, if a team is locked in and seeding line is not going to be impacted, if Kentucky's up there at the top, that could be a little bit of an easier game than it looks like on paper. And you get Vandy and Oklahoma, two of the teams that we didn't have ranked very highly away. I think that last 4 games could be huge for a team we think may be on the bubble.
The back half of Missouri's schedule presents great opportunity or great failure. Because you think, but you said it right. If they're, let's say they're a bubble team, and the back half, the last 9 games on your SEC schedule, unless my math is off here, Texas A&M at home, Oklahoma at home, at Georgia, home against Alabama, at Arkansas, home against South Carolina, at Vanderbilt, at Oklahoma, home against Kentucky. To me, those are all games that, I feel like Missouri, if this is the team we think it's going to be, right, those
Right.
home games look really good. A couple of those road games look winnable. And so I think that is it, right? And so it's a matter of what do they do in the front half of the schedule. But I think their season will be it'll be make or break in that final second half of the SEC slate. So
Yeah, sets up nice down the stretch. Okay, Oklahoma. This is a cool graphic.
I like
This
that.
is
Yeah.
yeah. Whoever designed this, whew, that is nice. What I've got a tough January. I think they they didn't get any favors out of the gate here, and a really tough road schedule, honestly. But lots of good home opportunities. If they can
Mm-hmm.
get the ball rolling at home, you can pick up some. I mean, almost every game at home it looks like it's Q1 other than maybe 2, maybe 3. So gonna be tough on the road, but could definitely do some damage there and steal some wins at home.
Yeah, I think this is another one where it's like, I mean, there's tough games in a lot of spots, but it does feel like there are a couple of those spots where you just don't look at it and say, boy, there's a 4-game stretch where they got no shot or anything like that, right? Like,
Right.
I don't think you look at that in any way, shape, or form here, and I feel like that's good. Is there's at least some opportunity where you don't feel like this is going to be one of those teams that's streaking in the wrong direction. Sure, they could be win a couple games here or there, but it feels like you're kind of bouncing up and down in terms of what the projections are for these opponents. So yeah, I think a lot of good home games on the schedule. Doesn't feel like there's any of those just like stretches where you're like, oh man, what are we going to do once we get here?
Yeah.
But still, I mean, as always, there's tough games across the board, and yeah. So I think this is another one that we talked about, like Kentucky
Yeah.
seems pretty balanced in terms of the way the schedule falls.
Yeah. Not too many like gauntlet stretches
No.
here for Oklahoma. Okay. South Carolina. This is. I mean, look at those first 2 games.
Mm-hmm.
First 2 home games, massive. And 4 winnable road games to start. You
Mm-hmm.
go to Mississippi State, Vandy, Oklahoma, Georgia. I'm not saying, any of those are going to be a walk in the park, but they're not some of our, top 4 teams. So if you can still, even the first 3 home games, look at that. Alabama, Auburn, Florida. If you can come out of there with a nice split, they got a chance to have a really nice January here.
Yeah, I like this schedule for South Carolina because,
I
like you
do
said,
too.
I mean, I think getting the 2 teams at the top, at least in our initial projections, in Alabama and Auburn at home, 2 of your first 3 games. Got to go to Mississippi State. We know how that goes, but I mean,
Yep.
South Carolina also knows how that goes going to Mississippi State. Vanderbilt, Oklahoma, as we said, 2 teams that are probably going to be projected in the bottom tier of the SEC, just based on preseason projections and all that. And then the home games, like there's so much opportunity with those
Yeah.
home games, and so yeah, like I think there's a lot of opportunity. Mississippi State twice, Georgia twice, Who else is the other? Florida twice. Yeah, so I don't hate this one at all because if you look at it based on, again, our rankings mean nothing.
Right.
But if you look at the road games, they get road games against the teams that were picked in the bottom 4 of our composite staff ranking, right? Vanderbilt, Oklahoma, Georgia, LSU. How many other teams get that? I don't know that a lot of other teams are going to have that on their schedule. So,
Yeah. And
yeah.
even look at there's you get Texas and Arkansas at home late February, early March if you need another quad one win to
Yep.
boost you up. This schedule sets up a lot nicer than some other ones do.
Yep.
Okay, Tennessee. Look at that first game. Woo! That's a nice first game there.
But look at
But
those next 2 games.
yep, that's what I have. So we're gonna learn a lot about Tennessee right off early January. We're gonna know a lot. Those 3 home games in a row, though, I really like that. Kentucky, Florida, Mizzou.
Mm-hmm.
If you can go 3-0 there, man, that's what I think is going to be 3 quad 1 wins right there. If Missouri's quad 2, so be it. But I think those are 3 quality wins right in a row to just launch into February kind of with a ton of momentum. I like that little area of those 3 home games, Blake.
Yeah, I mean, look, Tennessee's got to bring it, or hey, they could be 0-3 after the first 3
I
games because
know.
they got Arkansas at Florida at Texas. I don't think that'll be the case, of course, but again, that's a tough part of their schedule. And then you mentioned, I think that stretch of games: Auburn on January 25th, Kentucky January 28th, Florida February 1st, Missouri February 4th or 5th. That's a big stretch, having 3 straight
Yeah.
home games. Auburn on the road before that. So yeah, but I think there's some tough road games in the back part of that too. At Kentucky,
Yeah.
at A&M, Ole Miss. But I don't hate this one as much as others in terms of it's a strong schedule, especially like we said up front and that kind of middle part. But
Yeah.
I still think there's some opportunity. Again, Vanderbilt's on there twice. Who else is on there twice? They get
You get Kentucky twice.
Kentucky twice, and who's the third team? How am I missing this? It's right there in front of us.
Florida.
Florida. Florida's the other one. All right, so there you go.
I
It's
think
okay. It's
a
tough,
tough
but
schedule. It's a
yeah.
tough schedule, but I think if they come through in the spots that they need to, winning that first game, but basically if they take care of home court, I think they'll be fine.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. Texas A&M.
No, look at this. Look at this guy right here. This pose, I think everyone should have had one of these, where you just have a guy sitting there, a man on top of the world, just sitting there looking at this schedule, thinking, you're telling me we get 3 straight home games to start SEC play against Texas, Alabama, and LSU? Texas to start SEC play, huh? Congratulations to the schedule makers for that. Perfect.
Hey, that's just how things shook out.
I'm sure. Yeah.
I saw a lot of A&M fans upset that they're getting Texas that first home game when the students are on break, but
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I have already seen so much pushback on it that I have no doubt that they're going to pack the place out. I have no doubt.
Break is
But
canceled.
yes, where no one's going home. This was interesting, and everybody probably knows by now I'm more bullish on A&M than everybody else is. But you get Alabama, Arkansas, Auburn, and Tennessee at home, and you don't have to go there.
Yep.
That I don't know if there's any other schedule that has that. So I think it's tough because you have that 3-game home stretch, but you gotta cancel that out with a 3-game road stretch also to start like January, mid-January. So tough stretches, but if they take care of home and pick up those big wins, I don't think the road games are gonna mean as much.
Texas twice in the first 4 SEC games, which I think is interesting. Like you said, they get the
Yep.
one right off the bat. They go to Austin on January 25th. But yeah, I mean, elsewhere, yeah, it's nice to have 3 straight home games to start SEC play, although you will get the 3 straight road games:
Yep.
Oklahoma, Kentucky, Ole Miss. But I think as of right now, they'd be favored in at least 2 of those,
Mm-hmm.
if not all 3. And so, yeah, I mean, so I think it sets up nicely. Oklahoma's on the schedule twice, Texas on the schedule twice. And then who's the other team on there twice, Max? God, it's staring me. Why I can't ever find these? Like it's just
Oh,
because
jeez.
it's LSU, right? Yeah, it's
LSU.
LSU. LSU's the other team. So I mean, I think that's also probably not too bad. So I like this schedule for the Aggies, no doubt.
Unique schedule, a little bit different than the others.
Yep.
Okay, another Texas. Here we go. The Longhorns. Tough home schedule, but you do not have to go to Alabama, Auburn, Tennessee, or Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so you kind of have that trade. You're going to have some really big time games in the Moody Center, which I think plays in their favor. You're going to hear about that with Keenan, but you're not going to have to play very many hard road games. So it's kind of that give and take with the home and away.
I'm curious. This to me looks like it's definitely one of the tougher home schedules. I don't think there's any question, right? Because you have Auburn, Tennessee, Missouri, A&M, Arkansas, Alabama, Kentucky. Like it's a tough home schedule, but that's also a good thing, right?
Right.
So, like you said, it's really looking at kind of the games on the road that, as of right now, they're probably favored in over half their road games. Um, I would say I wouldn't say easily, but you know what I mean. Like I think they would be
Right.
favored in over half their road games right now. So yeah, so I like this setup for Texas, and to have a bunch of big time foes coming in your first year in SEC play, a nice
Yep.
thing to have, like we mentioned. So yeah, I think it sets up nicely. So
This is one of the ones I like a little bit more. I think it sets up real nice.
yeah,
And to our last, Vandy. Vandy has a kind of a favorable start. That's not a bad start at all. But
but
uh, but
wait till
but
wait till it gets to about
wait till
yeah, I don't
February.
know. I mean, it's not a bad start, but at the same time, my goodness, I
It's
look at this
it's tough
schedule.
quick.
This is one of the toughest schedules in the SEC. Like
It is.
I feel pretty confident about that. So
Yeah, it gets tough real quick. And it doesn't really let up. Like you go even
yeah,
into late February, within 4 games you're at Tennessee, at Kentucky, at Texas A&M. I mean, and then you get to turn around at home and you get to play Missouri and Arkansas. It's like it's tough. This is one of the tougher ones.
yeah, Missouri twice, Tennessee twice, Kentucky twice, and then yeah, they got some challenging games elsewhere at Alabama, at Florida. Of course, the games including Tennessee and Kentucky at A&M. And then
Yeah,
you got Arkansas, Texas. Yeah, this is a brutal one.
yeah.
I think this is a tough one for Mark Byington and company. So
Yeah. Well, alrighty, that wraps us up for the schedules.
all right. Well, there's some thoughts on the conference schedule as a teaser. We may or may not have someone coming on with us next week to give you even more insights into these schedules. And
Hmm.
so we'll leave it at that. Hit the subscribe button. You won't want to miss it if that is on next week's episode. But now, Max, we're going to get to your conversation with Keenan Womack about the Texas Longhorns, huh?
Oh yeah, yeah. Great conversation, and Keenan is a mastermind. I mean, this guy works for the Mavericks. He does writing for a bunch of different stuff. Big into Texas hoops, Texas football. He really knows the roster up and down. It was a really good conversation, and I learned a lot about kind of the team's build and how they're going to be able to execute different areas, rebounding and such. Really good conversation.
All right, let's jump into it. Texas basketball with Keenan Womack.
All righty, got Keenan Womack with me here. He before we recorded, he told me everything he does. He told me how to introduce him. This guy is a jack of all trades, master of none. Honestly, I can't even. Keenan, Sports Illustrated, this beat, that beat. Introduce yourself.
Yeah, man, I'm Keenan Womack. I do Texas Sports Unfiltered every day over there on that YouTube channel and the app. I do Mavericks for SI. I cover the NBA draft for SI. I do Pac-2 coverage for Fan Nation. So I'm all over the place, brother. But really excited to talk to you today, my friend.
You name it, Keenan's on it. Okay, so just gonna start kind of a little bit vague here, kind of overall. So we're kind of backstory. I picked Texas to win the national championship 2 years ago. I absolutely loved that team. I absolutely loved him. Watched almost every game. Like that Tyrese Hunter, Marcus Carr, Timmy Allen, Brock Cunningham, Dessou. I feel like they were kind of compacted into like a little 2-3 year era. And I think is it just me, or does it kind of feel like Texas basketball's kind of got a fresh start here, kind of entering into something new?
Definitely, yeah. All those guys are gone. Even Tyrese Hunter transferred to Memphis. He was kind of the last remnant of that team. The rest of the guys all graduated. So yeah, no, it's definitely a new era, a lot of new players, and exciting new era though. I really like this roster a lot. I think they improved drastically over last year, especially in the backcourt. So really looking forward to this season in the SEC.
Before we dive into the nooks and crannies of this roster, because it is quite interesting with how the backcourt and the front court are gonna kind of the relationship between the two. But let's start with the Moody Center, okay? Because that place is a madhouse. I actually was looking it up. Ken Palm's got him in the top 25 nationally, home court advantages. And the SEC fans, the Big 12 fans, I'm sure, are just as crazy. SEC fans, they love their home courts. Auburn's home court. Just go down the line. They love a home court. Moody Center is going to be up there for one of the better home courts. And you guys have got some big games, got some big non-conference games, and even that home slate. I mean, you guys get in SEC play, Bama, Arkansas, Auburn, Kentucky, you name it. You got some big home games. What about that Moody Center makes that thing so good?
I think it's partially the fact that the old Frank Irwin Center just didn't really have the swag, I guess, that the Moody Center has, right? And I think part of it is now that they have a kind of a badass home court, like people want to go to it. They want to fill that thing out. They want to make it one of the better home courts in the SEC. But the Big 12 is a super tough basketball conference, right? I mean, you got Fog Allen Fieldhouse to play at. I forget the name of Iowa State's home arena. That's a tough place to play. United Supermarkets Arena in Lubbock is a crazy environment. I was actually at the Chris Beard return game to Lubbock. So that was, you talk about a nutty atmosphere. That was pretty crazy. So, it's going to be an adjustment because the SEC in basketball is so drastically improved over the last 10 years, like by consistency per team, right? Like it's not just Kentucky running everything. It's not just one team. You got Alabama, who might have the best roster in the country. You got Auburn, who's got Johni Broome returning. They've got Chad Baker-Mazara coming back. You've got Florida looks great. Ole Miss looks great. South Carolina with Collin Murray-Boyles. Like this SEC, Arkansas, brand new look Arkansas, new look Kentucky. Like this conference is tough, and there's a lot of tough environments to play in. But, yeah, the Moody is going to hold its own as far as one of the tougher places to play. It's brand new. It's right on campus. So it's not like a trip, it's right there. It's right next to where the Moody or the Irwin Center used to be. So it's a real home court advantage, and they didn't really have that with the Irwin Center. So it's really an exciting place to play games. It really is.
I got to make my way. I got to make my way to the Moody sometime.
I'll show you around, brother.
Oh, I'll remember that. Okay. So let's dive into the roster a little bit here, because I really do think it's an interesting one. And most times we'll start in the backcourt, but there's a lot to be said in the backcourt. I'm going to start in the front court here for you, because that's where I kind of have my biggest questions, and I think you may have some answers. Last year, if you look at the stats for Texas, if you look at kind of how they finished, very good numbers except for the rebounding. A little bit, the numbers on the rebounding weren't that great. I'm curious to hear, because this team is pretty big. If you look at some of the height on this lineup, team is pretty big. Curious to hear your take on how the rebounding may improve this year.
Yeah, so you lose Dylan Mitchell, who's arguably your best rebounder last year. But I think the way that they're going to have to rebound this year is they're going to have to attack it sort of how the Knicks do with a Josh Hart way, right?
Yes.
Where you're getting your wings involved, right? Like you're going to have guys like Arthur Kaluma rebounding. You're going to have guards having to rebound, right? You're going to have guys like Kendall Weaver rebounding. You're going to have to attack it with multiple guys, right? So Caden Shedrick is your 5. He's going to be your starting 5 this year. He played 17 minutes a game last year, but he was only grabbing 3 rebounds a game, right? Like he and Kendall Weaver had about the same amount of rebounds, and Weaver was playing about a minute more a game. So part of that was Ze'Rik was dealing with back and shoulder issues, right? And that's
Yeah.
going to affect your physicality. It's going to affect the way that you can box people out. It's going to affect the way you can reach up for rebounds. So that's definitely a concern. But I do like the addition of Arthur Kaluma as far as rebounding goes from the wing spot. I think Jason Kent is a really good rebounder, averaged about 8 boards per game last year. He's going to fill that kind of Dylan Mitchell role of the 4 who rebounds, and the way Texas plays is their bigs kind of play on the elbows, right? Like they run a lot of horn sets. So guys like Jason Kent are going to have to attack the glass. And Jason Kent's 6'8", he's about Dylan Mitchell's size. I think Dylan Mitchell's about 6'8", 6'9" as well. Not quite the athlete Dylan Mitchell is, but brings a lot more to the table as far as offense goes, in my opinion. I think he's as good of a cutter, and I think he's more efficient. He can shoot the ball better from 3. Well, he can shoot the ball from 3. Dylan Mitchell didn't really try to do that very much last year. As much as I love Dylan, great guy, love that kid. But he's at Cincinnati now. So you're going to have to get some production at the rebounding spot from guys like Tremont Mark as well. Even when Malik Presley gets in the game, guys like Trey Johnson, who's a guard, but he's 6'6", and he's wiry strong, as Jerry Hamilton said, and I agree with that. So yeah, it's going to be a group effort on the boards for sure. And your backup center is Ze'Rik Onyema. I don't know how much he's going to play this year, but he averaged about 2.5 boards a game last season. Pretty limited on the offensive end, but maybe get in there and attack the glass a little bit.
Real quick before we move on from the front court, in those non-Ze'Rik minutes, what are you expecting the 4 and 5 to look like in the non-Ze'Rik minutes?
Well, I don't know that they'll run a center because they don't really have another center. Okay. They have Jamie Vinson, who's a true freshman. I don't know how much he's going to play this year. He's about 6'11", 215, so he's pretty slight. I like his shot blocking, but his physicality is sort of maybe not a question, but something he's going to have to develop, I would say.
Yep.
He's pretty raw player. They kind of stole him at the buzzer from Vanderbilt. He last second signee. I think he asked out of his NLI actually from Vanderbilt and ended up at Texas. So you would think he'll probably play some. Ze'Rik Onyema will probably get on the floor. The only problem with him is I don't know that he can run the floor when they're trying to do transition stuff. So that's kind of a concern. But yeah, in the non-Ze'Rik minutes, they're going to have to really rely on those wings to get in there and attack the glass from the perimeter even.
Well, that's a perfect segue into the wings. So when looking at like a makeshift depth chart, besides and not naming, we'll get to them, but not besides Devin Pryor and Malik Presley, because I think that they are going to be kind of filler roles, not really in the main backcourt roles. And you can correct me if you have different opinions on that. But between Jordan Pope, Julian Larry, Trey Johnson, Kendall Weaver, and Tremont Mark, am I wrong to say that the 1, 2, and 3 spot is going to be a combination of those 5 guys?
I would throw Arthur Kaluma. Well, Kaluma is going to play a lot of the 4 this year. So, yeah, I would say that's pretty accurate. That's probably what you're going to get from those 3 positions. You're probably going to be rotating between most of those guys. I would say Larry and Pope are going to be your 1s. Trey is going to be your 2 for the most part. Tremont Mark can play a little bit of the 2 as well. Yeah, I think that's pretty fair to say. Those 5 guys are probably going to be your backcourt.
Okay, so with that kind of established, we have Julian Larry, who I know you were very high on Julian Larry, and we'll get to him. Jordan Pope and Larry, they have kind of a contrasting play style. It's not like you have 2 of the same player starting and backup. Talk to me a little bit about that kind of ball handler relationship you think Larry and Pope may have.
Yeah, so Julian Larry is probably more of a facilitator. Not that Jordan Pope can't facilitate, but I mean, Julian Larry averaged almost 5 assists a game last year, right? And part of that was due to the Indiana State system. I mean, Josh Schertz's system was super effective
awesome
at getting guys open shots. I mean, it was an absolute crime that they weren't in the NCAA tournament last year. I think they would have won a couple of games, honestly, because that offense is beautiful to watch. It's just all off-ball screening. There's like almost no dribbling. It almost looks like the Spurs in the early 2000s, right? Just a lot of touch passes, stuff like that. So Jordan Pope is more of a guy that's going to shoot off the bounce, right? So he shot 36% off the bounce, right, from 3 Like that's not catch and shoot, like literally dribbling it up, shooting it off the dribble, 36%. So they're different in that way. And that Jordan Pope is more of an instant offense, create his own shot kind of guy. Not that Julian Larry can't do that, but he's much less of a scorer and much more of a facilitator. He's more of a catch and shoot 3-point shooter versus a guy who will shoot it off of a screen or off of a bounce or something like that. So that's the main difference between those two guys is Pope creates for himself and Larry more creates for other guys.
I think that's a very well said description, because I was a little bit not confused, but I'm just, when you look at kind of like you have Trey Johnson at the 2 and you have Mark probably at the 3, and then you still have Kendall Weaver in there, who as we have you on more this season, Keenan, you'll get to know I'm a bully ball guy. All right, everybody likes their threes and they're spaced out. Chuck the ball at the backboard, crash the glass, throw some elbows, get a little bloody. That's my type of basketball. That's Kendall Weaver in my eyes. I watched him play in Charlotte against State in the tournament. Colorado State. My goodness.
Yeah.
Watched him play. Thought he was fantastic live. I'm really high on Weaver. Talk to me about how you think Weaver fits in, because there's a lot of big names here in this backcourt.
Yeah, Kendall Weaver is important because he crashes the glass at 6'3", right? Like he averaged 3 boards per game last year. Like I said earlier, as many as Shedrick averaged in about the same amount of minutes, right? So Kendall Weaver is a guy that's going to bring it every night. He's a guy like Jerry said in our interview or our segment. Basically, he's going to do whatever it takes. He's an intangibles guy, and I know that's kind of cliche, but it really fits the description for him because he's on top of that. He's a fantastic athlete. Like he is an NBA level leaper. He has a crazy vertical. He can get up there. If he can improve his 3-point shooting, because that was not great last year. I mean, he didn't take many attempts, and he shot much better when he was at UT Arlington his freshman year, and he took more attempts and was more efficient on those shots. But he can defend too, just because of the effort and just he'll just get in your grill, man. He's really one of those guys that can defend one-on-one. He's going to struggle with guys that are, the bigger backcourts, the John L. Davises. Like you don't want him maybe guarding that guy, but you can have him guard guys around his size up to maybe 6'4", 6'5", and he can really handle those assignments because of his lateral quickness and his effort. He's just a guy that's going to bring it every night, and he's not going to complain about his role. He's not going to complain he's not getting enough shots. He's just going to will himself into that lineup. He's just that kind of player.
I didn't know it was possible, but you just made me become even bigger of a fan of Kendall Weaver.
Yeah, he's the man.
It kind of reminds me, the description you just had kind of reminds me of Aidoo Thiero, if you're familiar with him.
Arkansas.
Just kind of like so good at so many little things. He's got to be on the floor, Yeah. Okay, so we've got that. We're going to save Trey Johnson. We're going to get to Trey Johnson. I know. So we've kind of got that nice dynamic with Pope and Larry. We've got Kendall Weaver just full of energy off the bench. We've got kind of a rebounding by committee, everyone pulling in. We got a lot of height all the way down to the 2, 6'6" and up.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about the spacing, the 3-point shooting, because Tremont Mark is a little bit more of a mid-range guy off the wing. Yeah. Capable. But when you look at the volume, about the past 2 years, I think he's been like maybe 1.1 threes a game, maybe like 1.2, like just a tad over a 3 a game. So capable. Mm-hmm. If you leave him open, he's going to shoot it, but not a guy that's going to start spraying and banging. So talk to me a little bit about the spacing, how you kind of think this offense is going to work that way.
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, they run a lot of horn sets, which is, your 4 and 5 are kind of playing at the elbows. My only concern with Tremont Mark is that he operates a lot in that mid-range area, right? Like 34% of his shots last year were from that elbow area. Like he likes to pull up, right?
Yeah.
So that's going to be a little different for him. He's going to have to make that adjustment. I feel like he probably will have to shoot more threes this year just because he's going to have opportunities too, right? He's going to have guys like Julian Larry setting him up. He's going to have decoys. We'll get to Trey, like you said, in a minute, but he's a guy that was top 10 in the SEC in scoring last year on a bad team. Like, let's be real. Arkansas last year was not good. They didn't space the floor well, and he still managed to score 16.2 points per game. Another thing I like about Tramon Mark's 4.5 rebounds a game and 2 assists a game, right? So he does a lot of stuff. What needs to be addressed with Tramon Mark was his defense, but he showed that defense at Houston, right? Like, there were a lot of chemistry issues on the defensive end for Arkansas last year. But sorry to get off on a tangent. I know you're talking about spacing, but that's my only concern is that he operates in the same area that the bigs operate. But I feel like they'll be able to set him screens and he'll be able to figure some things out offensively. He's not really an attack closeouts guy, but he is a guy that can create his own shot. So I feel like his creativity will come into play a lot given the horn sets that the Horns run.
See what you did there.
Hey.
I kind of like this. I kind of like this unconventional style when you look at other SEC teams where it's just like defined. We've got shooters in the backcourt. We've got rebounders in the front court. We got a back to the basket guy. I feel like this Texas team's going to be able to play a little bit of hybrid. Play bigger guys at smaller positions and vice versa. They could go really big and play almost a full lineup of 6'6" or taller, or they can go small and have the 4 and the 5 be 6'7". I'm just fascinated by that. So before we get to a few close-up questions, everybody wants to know about Trey Johnson. Before we dive into what he's going to kind of bring to this team, has there been any word out of practice or anything? I tried to look on Twitter to see anything. I couldn't find much, but have you heard anything?
Yeah. So what I've heard is he's really earned the team's respect, and that he is an extremely hard worker, like high level competitor, right? And you can see that. I always tell this story every time Trey comes up because it's kind of what put him on the national scene. So when he was at Lake Highlands before he transferred to Link Prep for his senior year, he was a sophomore at Lake Highlands. So he's 15 or 16 years old.
Yep.
And they'll go up against Richardson. And Richardson at the time had Cason Wallace and Rylan Griffin as their backcourt, right? So 2 NBA guys, right? Cason Wallace already in the NBA. Rylan Griffin will play in the NBA. He's just too good of a player not to. And Richardson was ranked 6th in the country as a public school. Trey Johnson scored 39 points against that backcourt as a sophomore in high school. And find iFilm Hoops on YouTube and Texas Gasso, Great American Shootout. And there's a long video, and it's hit the whole game of him. And it's from the baseline, and it's just he's just creating his own offense completely by himself. He's cooking Rylan Griffin. It's hard to cook Cason Wallace. Anybody in the NBA will tell you that. But he's getting shots up over Cason Wallace. He's hitting turnarounds. He's a true 3-level scorer, a guy that can create his own shot from anywhere on the floor. He's an advanced shot maker, a guy with a very high-level functional handle. Like, he can really get around guys. He uses screens to his advantage. He's an elite shot-making, scoring guard, and he's 6'6". And Texas hasn't seen a player like this as a true freshman literally since Kevin Durant. I'm not saying he's going to put up 27 points a game like Durant did. He won't, because there's too many options on this team, and he's not KD's level. Nobody, how many guys are, but he's a guy that can put up 18 a game as a true freshman on this team, and he's just an elite scorer. He makes it look so effortless. His transition from his handle to his shot, it makes it look so easy. He makes it look so easy, and it's not easy what he's doing out there, shooting over guys and creating his own offense. So Trey Johnson is the guy on this team full of guys as a true freshman. He's truly a special player.
And I wasn't thinking this before you started your answer, but now it kind of sprang the idea into my head. Does Trey Johnson, his ability to do so much on his own, if you have a Julian Larry in the game with a Trey Johnson, that transition game has to be impeccable with 2 like legit ball handlers that can, do their own thing, that creates a whole new dynamic.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, just getting him, in those 2-on-1 situations, I mean, he's
Yeah.
going to be able to finish in most situations. The only real drawback with Trey is that he's not an elite level explosive athlete. He's not like I don't know, an Ace Bailey or a Cooper Flagg or somebody like that in this class. I'm just comparing him to other guys in this
Right.
class, but he's a good enough athlete to the point that handle really comes into play. And he's an advanced shot maker. He really can hit over guys. He can hit contested shots off the dribble, off of screens. He can shoot off the catch, even though he really likes to shoot off the dribble more. He's a freak on offense, man. He's a truly special player on the offensive end of the floor. And there's a very good chance he's a top 10 pick in what I would consider, as a guy who covers the NBA draft, an elite 2025 NBA draft class. I would say he probably will be a top 10 pick, which is really saying something in this group of guys.
Yeah. So we got a solid idea of kind of what this roster is going to bring to the table, a little bit of the momentum coming into this year. We've been very positive. To wrap up, my partner Blake always asks this question, so I'm taking a page out of his book. If we come to February, late February, heading into March, everyone's starting to talk about Joe Lunardi's bracketology more and more every week. Things aren't looking good with Texas. Sliding down a little bit. We're not up there in the seed line that we wanted to be. Why? What happened with this team? Maybe a worry that you have that we come to late February, it's not what we thought was going to be. What are you seeing there?
Yeah, I think the primary concern would be opposing offensive rebounding. That would be my biggest concern. So Texas was in the running for JT Toppin, who ended up going to Texas Tech. And that dude would have been perfect on this team because he's a physical interior presence. Now I'm hearing Ze'Rik is looking a lot more physical this year. The back and shoulder have been, I don't know if cured is the right word, but they're much better. He's feeling much better. He's going to have to play a lot more minutes than he's used to playing, right? He played 17 minutes a game last year. He's going to need to play 27 probably this year. He's going to need to really add to that minutes count, and he's going to have to stay healthy, and he's going to have to stay out of foul trouble. Luckily he's pretty good at doing that. He's not a guy that fouls a ton or gets in foul trouble often, but that's going to be super important for this team. I think if you're trying to beat Texas on the offensive end, what you should be doing is attacking the rim and trying to get him in foul trouble, because they're going to have to go small ball the second he gets in foul trouble. And the second you go small ball, you're at risk of giving up offensive rebounds. Second chance points, I think, is the thing that if this team struggles this year, that will be the thing that causes the struggles, will be giving up second chance opportunities. That would be my explanation for possible pitfalls for this team.
And then we're not ending on a bad note. We come late February. Texas is looking like we might get a top seed. We might be on one of these top seed lines, looking at a really good path in March. We're overachieving. What happened with this roster that we come to late February and we're like, we were sleeping on this team?
The shooting. I mean, there are so many good shooters on this team, and not just 3-point shooting. This team might be the best free throw shooting team they've had in 10 years. Like, every single dude on this team almost
that's big
is a good free throw shooter. Yeah. I mean, even Kendall Weaver, 74%. I mean, Trey Johnson's a great free throw shooter. Ze'Rik is 74%. Kaluma, 74%. Jason Kent's 84%. Julian Larry 78%, Jordan Pope's 88%, Tremont Mark's 81%. Like, these guys can shoot the free throw. So if they're driving the basket and they're creating opportunities, they're going to get free throw attempts, right? So I think free throw rate being high is going to impact this team's winning quite a bit. If they can create opportunities for their teammates where they're getting fouled, they're getting open shots, things like that, I think this team could score 77, 78 points a game. I mean, this offense looks really scary. The perimeter scoring looks very legitimate. And if they can continue to improve from what I've heard in practice, that the shooting looks awesome. I mean, Julian Larry shot the lights out in practice this whole summer. So if they can get those guys and they can create opportunities off of attacking closeouts and things like that. And another thing is the shooting is going to be good because these guys, or the offense is going to be good because the opposing team, they can't go under screens. You're going to have to fight over screens because there's so many good three-point shooters. And if you look at last year's Texas team, only one guy you really had to worry about going over screens, and that was Max Asmus. So this team has a lot of dudes that you're going to have to fight over screens for. That creates opportunities for backdoor cuts. Like this offense could be really scary good.
There you have it, folks. What I think is one of the most interesting teams in the SEC. Just an incredibly fun roster. Tons of, I'll say this, Keenan, and tell me if I'm wrong here as we finish here. Texas might be one of the highest ceiling teams in the SEC because of all this talent. I know you might be a little bit biased because you're a Texas guy, but we've done a lot of these interviews this offseason, and every time we end off with this, we have a pretty relative, like, they're not going to finish top 3. We know that, but they're not going to be a bottom 6 team. We're going to put them in the middle pack somewhere. I don't get this vibe with this team. I get like they could be unreal. They could be middle pack. And like you said, if things just go completely haywire in the front court, could be looking at a long season. I feel like this is a very interesting team.
Yeah, it's not super clear, right? Like,
right.
I think the ceiling is probably a national 3 or 4 seed, right? Like for now.
Okay.
That doesn't mean they can't, I'm not saying they're going to go to the Final Four or anything like that, but like this team could go to a Sweet 16. They could maybe go to an Elite 8. You never know. If they're shooting the lights out and they're hot at the right time, you never know with college basketball, right? Like you can just get hot and make it to the Final Four. Look at that. This team is almost built like that Miami team that beat Texas a couple of years ago, right? Like just multiple scoring options in the backcourt and just skilled forward. They have kind of a Norchad Omier with Arthur Kaluma, so I like this team a lot, but that the second chance points and offensive rebounding on for the opposing squad kind of makes me nervous, but the scoring from the perimeter is going to be fierce, and that's good enough a lot of times to get you some W's.
It's going to be a fun team to watch. Some huge non-conference games too at the Moody Center also. Cannot wait for that one. On your way out, Keenan, let them know again where you can find you, plug your stuff.
Yeah, I'm at Keenan Womack on Twitter. I cover Texas basketball. I cover a little Texas football too, but mostly I'm a basketball guy. I cover the NBA draft. I write for SI Mavericks, so I write pieces for them every day. I cover the Pac-2. I have a Substack too, which is Draft Punk Official, where I do NBA draft stuff and like scouting breakdowns and stuff like that. But that's mostly what I do, man. Appreciate you having me on, brother, for real. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, Keenan does a little bit of everything. I'm calling him Keenan, jack of all trades, master of none, Womack. Boom. There's the fighting nickname when you walk out to the octagon.
I usually go by Mr. 5 lunch breaks. That's the joke nickname, Mr. 5 lunch breaks.
There you go. There you go. Walk off home run right there. All right, guys, we'll get back to you here soon, Keenan. It's been a pleasure.
All right, a great conversation with Keenan on the Longhorns, as we said. Reason for high expectations for Rodney Terry's team coming to the SEC, and like we mentioned, a pretty good home schedule to have some fun with as well. But all right, Max, we now move on to trivia before we get into guess the starting lineup. Trivia time, Max. We know I've been on a roll here as of late. I don't think I've missed one in maybe 6 months. I mean, I don't know if the show's been going that long, but if it has, I'm pretty sure just been an incredible run here for me. So let's see if it continues with this week's trivia question.
This one you may get in 2 seconds, or it may take you 5 minutes.
Oh boy, not good.
Josh Hubbard.
Oh boy,
was originally committed to what SEC school before Mississippi State?
Oh my gosh, how do I not know this?
Yes.
Again, all right. The recruiting stuff is very quick moving. Okay, I don't always have a chance to keep up as well as I would like in terms of. I mean, we keep up with it, but you know what I mean. Like there's a lot of movement. I'm gonna be honest with you. I cannot even remember where, and I know there's people yelling right now that are probably fans of other teams that know the answer to this question, and I just don't. So what does that make me? I don't know. but I'm going to give it a shot anyways, right? Because I think, it's
Yep.
only natural for me to give it a shot. I mean, it wouldn't be Ole Miss. I mean, he's a Mississippi guy, but I can't imagine it would be Ole Miss.
He is a Mississippi kid. He
Yeah.
actually has the high school scoring record in Mississippi.
Yeah, he does. Georgia. I have no idea.
Ole Miss.
Okay. Unreal.
Yep.
Look, that's what I was thinking. I was like, look, he's a Mississippi kid. He went to Mississippi State. It would make sense for me to pick Ole Miss, but I just randomly picked someone else. So we won't count it. But at least I acknowledge the possibility of Ole Miss first. Let's just put it that way. Okay.
It was he was committed to Kermit, and then when Kermit left, he switched to Mississippi State. Yeah.
That's it. I don't know why. I just completely jumped over me. So the streak is over, but a new streak begins. I guess from here. All right, Max.
All right.
I've been giving you a lot of stats. Really, I've really been big on the stats thing. And one of the things that's always talked about, and actually, I may have already given you this one now that I think about it. I may have already asked you this question. But just in case I didn't, I'm going to ask you again. I think we've talked about this before.
Give it a shot.
So we always say free throws are such a big deal in the SEC, right? I think I've asked you the question before of which team holds the SEC record for most free throw attempts in a game.
I think you did player. You did player.
I did player. I know we did that when it was Grant Williams, right? With 23 for 23 or whatever it was.
That was the one you asked.
I think we mentioned this, maybe it was in another segment, but I'm going to ask you again because I think this is... No, but this is where... So it's SEC basketball season when you start to see people talking about the way the game's officiated in the SEC. So that's when you know it's almost time. And I've seen some of those discussions about how certain teams are going to adjust to the SEC and free throw attempts and all that kind of stuff. But the team that holds the single game record for free throw attempts in the SEC, in SEC history, single game record. Any ideas? Take a shot? It's within the last 8 years.
It's okay. It's within the last 8 years?
Yeah. So, I kind of gave you, by making it 8 years, I kind of gave you the year, but that's okay. 2016.
I will say Arkansas.
The South Carolina Gamecocks, I think I feel like we've discussed this before. Maybe it's just me.
I don't know. This is news to me.
South Carolina shot 63 free throw attempts against Memphis in 2016. They made 46 of them, which, if you want to go by free throw makes in a single game, let's see, that would rank 5th, or tied for 3rd, actually, all time for a single. Arkansas, you would have had if I would have said who made the most free throws in a game, as Arkansas went 48 of 53 against Ole Miss in 2004. So, there you go.
So I was half right.
You were half right. So
I'll take it.
Give it that. So we were both half right on trivia this week. So therefore, because we were both half right, we're going to give ourselves the victory. The streak continues. There we go. So there we go. All right. Who's starting for Alabama this year, Max? Because that's what we're talking about next. Who's
the Crimson Tide.
For the Crimson Tide? Mark Sears. I think he's in the lineup. Grant Nelson, probably also there.
Yep.
Big Cliff. He's going to be in there too. Do we have questions elsewhere?
And then we have the 2 and the 3.
Mm-hmm.
Who is going to start at the 2 and the 3? I have, we can take a quick look at the options. I'm going to put in Philon into that group. I know he's probably not going to start, but man, I like this kid. Chris Youngblood, we're president and CEO of the Chris Youngblood fan page. Latrell Wrightsell, returning sharpshooter. Derrion Reid, the highly ranked freshman, and Houston Mallette. Anybody stick out above the rest for you, Blake?
I think we've narrowed it down to that group. I think when we talked about Reid, maybe it been with Jordan Harper, I don't remember, but we were kind of just talking about the dynamic of how he fits in, whether as a starter, first guy off the bench, that kind of stuff. Man, he's so talented. I feel like it's hard not to see him out there.
Yeah.
From the start. But again, this is such an older team where they do have the option of just going full on grad transfer at every
Yeah.
position. I mean, so I think that's interesting, but yeah, I don't know. I think Reid is probably going to be tough to keep off the floor, just in my opinion. At least, if you do throw him out there right away, again, you're surrounded by all these older guys. So I kind of like him for that spot, but
can we agree that Philon, Aden, Holloway, and Houston Mallette will be coming off the bench? Can we agree on that, or do you have pushback on that?
I think that's probably a likely scenario, unless something changes, I would think.
Okay, so that narrows it down to 3 players for 2 spots.
Mm-hmm.
Youngblood, Wrightsell, and Reid.
See, the Youngblood Wrightsell one is tough for me.
Yep, me too.
Because,
and honestly, Jordan said that he had a good point about not throwing Reid into the fire.
Yeah.
Right away.
Yeah. I mean, so you could do that, right? I mean, but man, you got a lot of size there. If you bring Reid in at 6'7",
I know.
and you got Nelson at 6'10", Cliffs at 6'11". Man, I mean that's. But I mean, again, this is still a perimeter-oriented team. Well, I don't know this year, right? Who knows? So, yeah. I don't know. This is a tough one. Like, I mean, not for the whole lineup, but this is tough. Like to figure out how those 2 spots are going to shake out. Because, I mean, maybe something we wind up looking at the end of the game, right? And all those guys have pretty close to even minutes, no matter who starts. So, yeah.
I think for the sake of this, though, we got to narrow it down. And I'm gonna say that we have to have Reid in there. I think we both agree on that. I think we like him.
If he's not in there from game 1, I think he'll be in there by game, 5. Like that's my thought. But
yes, I think he may not start right away, but the majority of the season, I see Reid starting at the 3.
Yeah.
So that leaves us to Youngblood and Wrightsell.
Man, Youngblood's just. I mean, not to say Wrightsell's not, but man, Youngblood is just a winner. I mean, we've talked about this guy. Man,
I think so too. I'm leaning in a direction. I think they're gonna both have I don't think Wrightsell's gonna be playing 8th, 9th man minutes. I think he can be right up there with the rest of this guard group in terms of minutes. But for the sake of this, I'm gonna go Youngblood. I'm gonna give Youngblood the edge.
I mean, he's the AAC. What? He was co-player of the year last year. Like, I just think it's gonna be hard to bring this guy in and not feel like he's just gonna play a huge, huge role on this team. Yeah, I'm going Youngblood too. But again, wouldn't be surprised either way. But maybe those 2 are flipped. But if I'm also projecting by game 30, what's the starting lineup look like? I think it's this one that we just crafted. So, but the thing is with Alabama, it really doesn't matter because they just have so many options that they could mix and match anyone, anywhere. And you could take the 5 guys. Well, maybe not all 5 guys, but you could take, several of these guys out and put the backup in and be like, we're still good. We're still competing with most SEC teams, and we're probably just as good or better, right? I mean, because again, look at the backups, right? I mean, that's what we said. Like, if Holloway is your number 1 backup at point, if Wrightsell's the backup in this scenario, Mallette, Stevenson, Sherrell. I mean, come on.
When I was doing this, I didn't write it down, but I was like, you could have 4 guys go down with injury, and you're throwing out there Mark Sears, Latrell Wrightsell, Houston Mallette, Grant Nelson, and Aiden Sherrell with Jarin Stevenson and Labaron Philon coming off the bench. What?
Wild. All right. There you go. The Tide lineup, which is always going to be in motion because it's Alabama. So,
yeah.
All right. Likely, unlikely, Max. Let's have some fun with this
before
we wrap up with a bold prediction. Give me one. What you got?
All right. This is one that I thought was going to be very easy to predict when I thought of it, but I was like, well, now that I think about it, I don't know. The SEC has 2 teams that enter March Madness as 1/2 seeds?
Likely.
Oh, that I didn't know if it was gonna be that quick for you.
Not even a hesitation. Likely.
we
Because
go.
all I need in that scenario is Alabama to not be worse than a 2 seed, which I feel very confident in. And I also just need either Auburn, Arkansas, Tennessee, A&M, whoever else, Kentucky, Florida. I mean, who knows? All I need is one of those teams to be one of the top 8 teams in the country. And I feel pretty good about that possibility. So likely, mark it down. We're going to play this in March when the SEC doesn't have a seed higher than 5. And but right now, give me likely on a 1 and a 2. Who knows? Maybe give me 2 number 1s. We'll find out. That's probably not going to happen, but it's possible.
For our listeners, this was probably one of the most definitive likely or unlikelies we've had.
Without a doubt. All right. Likely or unlikely that the SEC has 5 teams that finish in the top 25 in Ken Palm's adjusted defensive efficiency metrics. Now, the reason I'm asking that question, Max, is last year wasn't quite so good because it was a very offensive-oriented conference, which is kind of unusual at times. But we saw kind of that big difference last year because remember the teams we talked about, Alabama, Kentucky, Florida, were all sub 9-ish in that metric. Only Tennessee, Auburn, and Mississippi State finished in the top 58. Georgia also was number 58 in defensive efficiency. So the SEC get a little bit better there this year. Do we get 5 teams, or is it still kind of a low number?
Tennessee, Auburn. Those are locks.
Mm-hmm.
I think Alabama, because I think with Big Cliff, size of Reid, you have Grant Nelson not playing center every game now.
Jump from 111 to top 25.
Yep.
All right.
Yep. Well, if you look at, I'll pull it up real.
They should, but
Nate Oates' adjusted defense the past 4 years.
Right.
Or Nate Oates at Alabama. Ready? 114, 3, 92, 3, 111.
So it's by the trend to go. It's every other year they finish in the top 3 in defensive efficiency. So this should be the year that they finish in the top 3. Yeah. All right.
I'm just following the trends.
All right. So that's 3.
That's 3, and then I lose confidence after that. I'm gonna go unlikely. I'm gonna go unlikely. Because I think you definitely get 3.
Mississippi State drop out because no Tolu Smith.
I think Mississippi State drops out. Yeah.
What about Arkansas? What about Arkansas? That's an interesting one. 133 last year.
That's just such a question. I mean, who knows? That's not even that's a wholly. You could put a different name on that team for 133. It's whole new program. So I don't know. I'm gonna go unlikely, but I think the 3 that are locks, I think could be like top 15, top 10. So
okay, all right. Give me one more.
One more what?
Give me another one. Give me likely, unlikely. Just
I think you meant what? I thought you meant one more team in the top.
No, don't give me another team.
Okay. Yep. Likely or unlikely? Collin Murray-Boyles has the most double-doubles in the SEC.
Interesting one. I'm going to say unlikely only because Johni Broome is in the SEC. And I think that it's very possible that he could lead that metric.
Okay.
That's the only. Not saying that I don't think Murray-Boyles couldn't be right there beside him, but I think the fact that Broome, who, I mean, I don't know how many he had last year, but he was always right there, right? I mean, even if he was, even if he was a rebounder too short, I mean, he may get it with blocks. Who knows? It's like, so I think with Broome there, just playing the percentages. If Broome was not there, and look, I know there's other guys too, right? That could qualify for that. Like even like a 10 assist guy. Like who knows? Maybe Mark Sears could just go off with double doubles all the time with his Alabama team.
Who knows?
But I will just say unlikely because I think that there is legitimate competition for him for that, and because I just think I don't know though, man, because it's like he is going to be doing so much for that team, and Yeah, it's tough, but I'll say unlikely just because of the Broome effect. So I'll go with that.
The reason I asked it is because I think he's getting 10 points every game. So
I think he's probably you're probably right, and
so
he's grabbing at least 8 rebounds every game probably. So it's yeah, it's tough.
that's a
but
tough. Yeah. Okay.
but I think there's probably someone we're forgetting, but I think those are your two in terms of surefire double, maybe every single game type guys, right? I'm trying to think if there's anybody else that would just fit that category. I'm sure there's someone out there. People are screaming about it, but it's just I don't know.
You could go through every roster and pick a guy that could.
Yeah. All right. Okay. All right. So I kind of went Ken Palm flavor here on this.
Okay.
So now we're gonna go to the offensive side because I thought it was kind of interesting, as we said, it was such a different dynamic on the offensive side last year. You had what 1, 2, I think it was 7 SEC teams finish in the top 40ish in offensive efficiency. How many SEC teams are likely or unlikely? So I'm going to say likely or unlikely that 4 SEC teams finish in the top 12 in offensive efficiency in 2024. Last year, you had 4. Alabama at 2, Kentucky at 7, Auburn at 10, Florida at 12.
Likely or unlikely they replicate that number of 4?
At least 4.
I'll go likely.
Alabama, Auburn,
Alabama, Auburn. And then I think
Florida?
but I was just going to say, I think between Tennessee, Florida, A&M, because they're that often. I mean, they were 26 last year, literally just because of an offensive rebounding stat. And then I think Mississippi State might be like a top 12 offense outside the top 100 defense, like just with how the way that perimeter offense is shaping up. And then
Arkansas.
Yeah,
Maybe?
you got Arkansas that could with that backcourt is incredible. But I think definitely Alabama and Auburn. And then out of the rest of the 14, give me 2 more. I think it might be capped right at 4. If you said 5, I would say unlikely. If you said 3, I would say 100% likely. I think 4 is the perfect number there. I'll go likely, though.
I like it.
What would you say?
All right. I would also probably go likely because I think there's going to be somebody that just pops up, and
there usually
we have multiple options for that. So I would also say likely. 12 is, you're getting what 33% of that nationally, but there's enough good offensive teams I think to make it happen. So I'll go likely too. All right, bold prediction, Max, to wrap it up.
I always like to tease my bold prediction earlier in the episode, and I have done that once again. This
Chris Youngblood will be the SEC Player of the Year.
Very close. No. This one's going to be hard to quantify. It's going to be hard to quantify come late season when we look back if this came true or not. But I have Labaron Philon will be Alabama's X factor. And I have that because when you look at the backcourt, Sears and Holloway 6'1", 6'1", Wrightsell 6'3", Youngblood 6'4", but he's not like a defensive maestro. Philon can do it all. This guy can rim run, he can shoot, he can block shots. He's great in passing lanes, stealing wise. Like I feel like Philon's going to be this backcourt's utility man who can do it all. I think he's just going to find his way to like 18 minutes a game. I think he's just that important for the backcourt's, collective skill set. I think what he brings, the other guys don't really have it. So that's why I put it, I was going to say like Philon all freshman team, Philon some type of award. It just didn't sit right. Philon's the X factor for this Alabama team.
I like it. A lot of Alabama talk, but they are a preseason number 1. So,
Yeah.
All right. So mine, it's kind of also hard to quantify, but I'm gonna take a shot here because we said some of these are bolder than others. We take our chances. Okay.
Yep.
And again, you can't really. I don't think the SEC hands out they don't hand like a most improved award or anything like that. But if we are going to go with that.
Good.
The most improved player in the SEC this year, bold prediction. Give me our guy, Big Z at Arkansas.
Oh, yes.
With the Hogs. Now, I don't know if you saw this. What was it? Several weeks ago, Cal said he's not letting Big Z shoot any threes. So I don't know if that's going to help or hurt our case for making this one of the bold predictions. But again, this is like shoot your shot style bold predictions. We're writing all these down. We're going to see if we get any of these right. Give me a shot. Big Z, most improved player in the SEC this year. He looks like the guy that was throwing behind the back passes for 10 minutes against Georgia or whatever it was. He looks more like that this year, and I think he's got a chance to take a big step forward. It's just a matter of playing time and all that, of course, with a very, very, very loaded front court with the Hawks.
I feel like people are underrating him as like a rim protector also.
Yeah.
Could put up some huge block rebound numbers also to go along with all the flash. I like it, Blake.
All right. There you go. The SEC Basketball Experience, episode 11 in the books. And again, thanks to Keenan Womack for joining us to talk Texas basketball. And we appreciate you guys, as always, for joining us as well. We teased it earlier. Might have a special guest for next week to really dive deeper into the schedules in the SEC. But we'll keep you updated on that. As always, if you want to sponsor the show, reach out to caroline.smith@southeastern14.com. Yes, we know it still says 14, but I promise you it'll get to her at southeastern14.com there. And also, check out those products. If you look there right below this little screen, you see all those things popping up on the screen. Go buy that stuff. And guess what? You don't have to pay anything extra. It just helps us when you buy those things for your favorite team. So do that. Give it a shot. And that helps out the channel here, support us. So check out everything SEC football, baseball as well here on the channel. SEC basketball team previews coming soon. And we appreciate you guys watching and or listening. As always, we'll talk to you soon. Southeastern 16.